and so it's a
Good morning and welcome to Breakfast at Productronica, day one at the show, and we actually made it. There's a huge crowd outside waiting to get in, obviously because of the COVID restrictions. Things are a little bit slower than usual, but nevertheless we have a huge program for you this week. My first guest on my program today is Luc Van Den Hove, who is the president of IMEC in Belgium, and he's also a key member of the SEMI board. So welcome, Luc. Nice to see you today.
nice to see you.
Okay, so I think the first thing I want to talk about really is to ask you what we can expect from Semicon Europa, because Semicon Europa, of course, is one hall here at the Munich Messe here. What can we expect to see there today?
Well, I think that it's so important that we can meet physically. I think after such a long lockdown, and I think it's clear that we are still not out of this crisis. But it is so important. I mean, last year the entire event was virtual. I think it's so important to have the connection among all the people, and especially now in these times where there's so much to do about chips, about the supply chain of chips, the shortages and so on. It is so important that people can gather again.
It's a very fluid market. I mean, there's so many variables and things happening at the time, as you say, supply chain being one of them. There's also a lot of new technologies coming on the market. Of course, we've got electric vehicles coming through. We've got heterogeneous technologies and even quantum computing on the horizon. So how does SEMI play into some of these new technologies?
Well, I think that there is indeed so much happening these days in this world, and I think the role of SEMI is to a large extent to bring the ecosystem together through shows like this, but also by organizing many events. The semiconductor industry actually is characterized by a global supply chain and global interactions. Also, the innovation is to a large extent the result of many of these global interactions, and this is where SEMI tries to contribute by really bringing the people together and representing this industry, which is really important. I think over the last year the attention to chips has increased dramatically. Now everybody talks about chips and realizes how important this technology is to drive innovation in so many sectors. You mentioned the automotive sector. This is one sector, but basically all industrial sectors built on innovations from semiconductors and chips.
Right. So let's mine down a little bit on the heterogeneous technologies, because it's characterized by packages with chiplets inside them, essentially. And these chiplets have materials that are compatible, very few CTE mismatches, etc. Do you see that as a technology becoming standard going forward? I mean, if you open your iPhone at the moment, you'll see pretty much 8 big chips, large chips, and very few small discrete semiconductors. Do you think that's going to be a pattern for the future?
Absolutely. I think this is going to be extremely important. In fact, this heterogeneous integration is just one more step in this evolution which we have been experiencing already for 40, 50 years in the semiconductor industry, and that is this drive towards building always more complex systems. We need to do that in order to respond to this insatiable demand for processing more data, storing more data, integrating more functionality in our systems, and that requires kind of a reduction of the form factor to a large extent, and this has been enabled through what we typically know as Moore's law, where we are integrating more and more chips on a single die. But this Moore's law is also one other version of Moore's law is by stacking the chips on top of each other using interposer technology, and this is also needed because one technology may not be ideal for all the functions of a system. And so we, by combining these chiplets using heterogeneous integration, we can optimize the process technology for each of these individual parts in a chiplet. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's going to be very important, a very important technology to make these ultra complex systems that we will need in the future.
For the future, yeah, absolutely. And talking about future technologies, I mean, I touched on quantum. How far out do you think that is?
Well, I believe that high-performance computing is very important, and there are several steps to be taken there. There is now the implementation of artificial intelligence in a much more energy-efficient way into these accelerators, and so domain-specific compute technologies are being developed. And quantum compute is like one of these steps, but it's still quite relatively far out. It's not going to be a general purpose computing platform that can be applied to everything, but specific, highly parallelized tasks could run very efficiently on quantum computing. But we believe, although there is a lot of progress being made over the last couple of years, we're still talking about something that is maybe 10 years out, I believe.
Right, okay, okay. Yeah, another word that seems to have been, obviously we had last week in Glasgow, we had COP25. So another word that's creeping into our lexicon these days is sustainability.
Absolutely.
How does that apply to electronics and possibly even the electronic supply chain? Does it make sense to ship these components and devices halfway around the world?
Yeah, well, I think that sustainability is extremely crucial in our industry. On the first hand, I'm very convinced that our technology and our chip technology, we have to make those processes more performant, more energy efficient, because if we don't develop newer technology, more performant technology, given the fact that the data rate is exploding exponentially, if we would not develop more efficient technology, more performant technology, more energy efficient technology, our energy consumption related to electronics would just explode exponentially.
Yep.
It would exceed even the world's available energy a few years from now. So this is impossible. So our industry really has the task to develop technologies that are more energy efficient, and that's why we have this continuous push towards more slow and to enable more slow. And I'm convinced it's not going to stop. So on the one hand, our technology can contribute to solving some of the big sustainability challenges on our planet. On the other hand, we have to make sure that when we fabricate those chips, that we do that in a sustainable way. And so there is a very big focus now in our industry to make sure that we optimize energy consumption during the manufacturing, that we minimize water consumption, optimize waste treatment, make sure that we minimize greenhouse gas emission during the fabrication processes. And I believe that for that, the entire supply chain needs to work together. And therefore, we are setting up a major program at IMEC to bring together all the key players representing all the layers of the value chain, like material suppliers, equipment suppliers, the fab companies, with the goal to really develop technologies that are more sustainable for the future. Nobody alone can do that. You have to bring together the ecosystem, and I believe that's also where SEMI can play an important role.
Yeah, excellent. No, I agree. I think it's going to be something that's going to play into the future roadmap for electronics in a big way.
Absolutely.
But there you go. Anyway, look, I want to thank you for sparing some time to come in and talk to us today. It's great to see you. I hope you have a wonderful show this week at Semicon Europa. There's certainly plenty of people out in that lobby that are waiting to get in, so which is an encouraging sign. But for now, thank you very much for coming in.
You're very welcome.